Welcome to CS Radio. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 222 of CS Radio. I'm J. Michael DeAngelis.
And I'm Natty Leach.
And we are here again, but you for the first time.
I know. And I notice immediately I'm swiveling back and forth.
Don't swivel. It's going to be very distracting on camera, as I discovered when we did our, again, you weren't here when I was testing with Chris from Penn Global. We recorded like a 2-hour thing of us chatting, and I was twisting in that chair the entire time.
It's what I notice every time when I do one of those, like we have big interview, whenever I watch myself and I'm in one of these chairs,
there you go
I'm
again.
just side to side like this the whole time.
It's a whole new world of having video. I was just talking to one of our new colleagues, Hannah, about maybe coming down and being on the show pretty soon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot. We have new people that haven't...
And she said, I would do that. She's like, I got a face for radio. I said, well, good news. There's cameras now. So, yeah, it's a whole new world. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at the camera. Looking at you. Look at the camera. I don't know what to do.
I liked Hannah's cat ears I saw today on her headphones.
Well,
were very interesting. She has a little sign that's
yes.
like, I'm in a meeting if the cat ears are off.
Yeah, so she wears headphones a lot, and so she decided that the best way to let people know if she could be distracted or not is if she has headphones on but not the cat ears.
That's a meeting.
She's in a meeting and she's not to be disturbed.
Yes.
But if she's got cat ears on, then the headphones are just playing music, and you should feel free to wave her down.
Yeah.
I was like, this is great, because she's sitting out there out in the open in what we call Coordinator's Corner, our little bullpen for all the coordinators.
Do we call it that?
I call it that. I think they call it that.
Okay. Not the bullpen, not something... bullpen, I guess, is baseball, but is it also like
bullpen journalism?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The Mighty Marvel bullpen. When I was a kid, Stan Lee would talk about the Mighty Marvel bullpen. You had visions of everybody sitting in their cubicles, going, "What if Spider-Man did this? And what if the Hulk did that?" And later, you found out, like, no, everyone was either at home or in an office. They weren't all yelling at each other like.
But it makes for an exciting visual.
Well, Stan Lee was a master storyteller.
He was.
And that's why we're turning this into a Stan Lee tribute podcast.
I was going to say, well, we've done it before with Stan Lee. I made a blog post on Stan Lee once, and then I think you also did shortly after his passing.
I think
we did do a little Stan Lee career services takeover.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to dig those out for the show notes.
I don't remember how good mine is, so beware.
Well, I'm sure mine was excellent.
Yes, I am too.
So we hope everyone had a good spring break. As we record this, you're still, assuming you're a student, you're on your spring break. And we've had a quiet but productive week here. It's given Natty and I a lot of time to put some finishing touches on our new media studio. Get it cleaned up a little, get it camera ready.
It is much cleaner than it was. That didn't take that long, even just yesterday.
No, we tossed some stuff. We threw some stuff in a drawer, and here we are. So, yeah.
We'll get there one day, piece by piece.
It just makes me think, what else can I fill the room with?
Gadgets. And
so many gadgets.
Neon signs and...
So many gadgets. I really can't wait to break out the green screen.
Yeah, that's right behind you. It can lift up.
I have a feeling our colleague Joseph is going to be doing a lot with the green screen.
He's going to be extremely creative with it.
Here's what I have to... So I know that we can do... I know how to key in the green screen stuff on the live cast like we're doing now. But if we're going to position the green screen somewhere else and use our portable camera, I need to learn how to do post-production keys. But I love learning. I love learning a new skill.
Yeah,
I'm sure I can do it in Premiere. I just have to learn
a new transferable skill awaiting your next employer.
I hope they come and knocking. I mean, very, very happy here. I've got a new podcast studio.
Nothing to hear here.
Very, very happy here. So, Natty, as everybody's coming back, it's sort of, it's unofficially the end of the semester, right? You always get this feeling.
It feels impossible to reach anybody once you get to after spring break. Post spring break is like
Though
nothing.
it's very interesting this year. And Joseph mentioned something about his own schedule in our staff meeting today. But my end of March through April, I'm doing more programs in a row than I've done all school year.
Okay.
I'm really booked up. I got 3 weeks of doing programs over at the library. I'm doing a whole bunch of programming for SP2 for the first time this year.
Improv.
I'm doing it 3 times, both 2 sessions for faculty and staff and 1 for students. So, and then I'm doing improv again at the library, but I'm also doing, Joseph and I are doing our LinkedIn workshop over at the library. I got a couple other things on the books that are just like, it's going to be a real busy back half of the semester. So all of that is to say, the semester is not over.
No.
Everybody knows
There's
that.
still lots of time.
There's lots of time. I know it doesn't help things that this week they start handing out cap and gowns to seniors.
And we'll be there.
We will. So we'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of this week as you listen. So if you are a graduating senior, an undergraduate senior, please stop by our table. We'll have snacks. We'll have goodies. We'll have a gift basket raffle. And what we're going to be asking you to do is to fill out your first destination survey, your career plan survey. Let us know what your plans are after graduation. And that can be, I'm employed, I'm going to grad school, I'm looking for either one of those things, or I don't know. I haven't started to think about it yet.
Yeah.
And that's
I'm
great.
not seeking.
And we can help you with that, or not, as you feel. So it's a low pressure thing. It's not a judgment on what you are or aren't doing. It's just we kind of want to take stock and see what the class of 2025 is going to be up to. And if anybody needs some assistance in their job search, we're here to help. And I think it's a great segue into something we love to talk about this time of year, which is those folks who feel like it's too late, that like the semester's over, I'm getting my cap and gown, all my friends are talking about the jobs and internships that they already have and the ones that they've been locked into for months or even a year, and I haven't even started yet, and I don't know what to do. And I think there's, I think that's actually a lot of people, and depending on what industry you're interested in, that's just the norm, and you shouldn't
Things
worry
are
about
just
it.
getting started. Every time I meet with a student, no matter the time of year, people say, "Oh, it's too late. Oh, I'm behind." I could be meeting with a first-year student at the beginning of September, and they feel like they're behind on things. So I think it's just a common feeling for many reasons. However, I think even now, where some people have seen applications that maybe they applied to earlier in the season, and if they didn't land something right away, they start to feel like, okay, things are dire now. But there's always more stuff. We're doing lots of things to help showcase the jobs and internships that are being posted right now. I was just talking to my colleague Brendan, and even in finance, industry that traditionally has hired earlier than anyone, he was talking about how over the last week or so he's been tagging a lot of really good jobs and internships to our finance community on our website. So there's lots of stuff that students can find there. If you are a graduating senior, he's also posting jobs there. But also, Handshake has lots of stuff every single day that I see getting posted.
Yeah.
In all sorts of different industries. So obviously, it skews more towards either smaller employers or those who hire closer to when they need someone, just a one-off of here's a position that opened up. But there's still lots of things in there from bigger companies. I saw recently Legendary Entertainment posted a ton of things just last week, I think. So there's been a lot going on recently, and we even have still on the horizon, we're still in early March-ish, and not until April we have the Just-in-Time Fair that we do with our colleagues.
Took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah, so our colleague Dustin is the pinpoint person this year, but it's something we've participated in for several years.
For the Just-in-Time Fair.
The Just-in-Time Fair.
Have I made that joke yet? I think it every time.
I think it has come up. I don't think we've said it on the podcast. We've
Okay.
been away for a while. But Dustin is working with a consortium of schools, other Ivies and folks in what we call the Ivy Plus Consortium.
Brown, Columbia, Cornell, Dartmouth, Duke, Harvard, MIT, Princeton, Stanford, UChicago, us, and Yale. That's the list. I had it written in front of me.
Now, that's a good list.
It is a good list.
And that's a virtual fair. So
Yes.
you can register for that in Handshake and meet virtually one-on-one or in group sessions with employers. It's all range of industries. And remind us of the date on that, Natty. I know
Is
you got it right in
April
front of
3rd is when oh sorry, hold on. That's the registration and payment deadline. I might be on the employer page. It is April 10th for
you.
students.
There you go.
And it's 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. There's already about 10 or so employers. There's a good range. There's some smaller ones. There's some bigger ones. Epic, who comes to a lot of our in-person fairs, they do healthcare tech-related stuff. I saw that Jane Street, which is also a really popular employer in the quant finance kind of space. So those are just some big names, but there are also some smaller ones on here too, and we're still a month out, so there's going to be more and more employers added.
And
over
I
the next
know
month.
registration for that for students will open up this Friday as you're listening to it. Well, actually, last Friday as you're listening, this Friday as we're recording. It opens up on the 14th. I just saw the signage upstairs. So registration should now be open for that. I'll be happy to put a link in the show notes. And that is open to all Penn students, including our online students. I know sometimes there's a little bit of tension or confusion about what people in online degree programs can participate in. But this is an online virtual fair, and it is open to everybody. Undergrads, grads, alumni, come, enjoy.
Yeah, and
From
I
the
think
comfort of your own home.
for virtual fairs, I think the most important thing is that you take a look early on. So take a look now, see, like
see
I
who's
said,
coming.
there's 10 people so far. That'll probably increase. Actually, there's probably about 15 or so. So that'll probably just keep going up. But you can start to schedule things now. Going into Handshake.
Yeah, so definitely get in early for the ones that you want. If you're like, oh, Epic, I really want to talk to them, then as soon as registration opens, get in there. As soon as their schedules open up, get in there, pick your prime slot.
Yeah, and I imagine those bigger names are the ones that are going to go really
yeah.
quickly. So certainly prioritize those ones. But, I mean, also great opportunity to connect with a mid or a small size company, too, that might be coming to.
So what else? What advice do you have? So let's say, so it's one thing, if a student comes. We were just talking about some students who were looking at sort of fine arts positions and marketing and things. And those things are all open now and will be, those are employers that hire as needed. So there's not a set timeline for those sorts of things like there is in finance. But you work with a lot of folks who are interested in going into finance and tech and those consulting and those things that have a little more structure to them. So what are you telling folks who are still on the hunt for those types of things?
I think the biggest thing is find ways to diversify your search, because I think what can be really hard when you're at this point in the process, and one of the things that I think reinforces the idea that is many times false, that you are behind, there's less things to look for, is I work with a lot of students who are just very hyper-fixated or hyper-focused on one type of employer or one type of company that they're looking for. And so when companies who are all similar like that post a whole bunch of things at once, it feels great and you're applying to lots of stuff. But then once you move into another phase and there's less of those exact types of employers, it's worth kind of expanding it out. And you could still keep some things really close to what you want to be applying for if that's a particular job function within finance. If you want to stick to global markets or whatever it might be, you could still kind of keep that close to home. But I think the further you go along, the more you should start to have like these expanding rings of how you want to continue to diversify. That could be by the size of the employer. That could be by the job function itself. It could be by the geographic location. If you were only focused in New York City, maybe looking at other places too. Things like that. And sometimes people feel like, oh, I'm looking at backup options.
Yeah.
But there's so many really good jobs that I think the hardest part is finding the right job that is going to be really interesting for you, but you haven't heard of or known about yet. A lot of times you know the names that are top of mind. So like if there's a big employer in the industry that you're interested in, you'll know that. If you're working in tech, you're like, of course you know Amazon, of course you know Google. But there might be Google. But there might be smaller companies that you've never even really thought about that still do really important work, really cool work. The example I give all the time in entertainment is there's so many different production companies.
Oh my gosh!
And
yes,
artist talent management companies like that are unique to sometimes even like really big artists. Like I used to work for the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, who has a massive tour and they're huge during the winter season. But They have a really specific, just one talent management company called Night Castle Management. If I would have never known to search for Night Castle Management, other than either like looking a little bit more into that band that I was really interested in seeing all the different types of things that they do and the work that they do, or through using like, and I think this is where it comes into play for any industry that you're interested in, diversifying how you're searching for things. So if you've been mostly looking at specific companies' websites, starting to branch it out and looking at more of a job aggregator style thing, like Indeed or LinkedIn, where you can discover things you haven't heard
of. In our community pages, we often have, I know you've got them on the media page and I've got them on the performing arts page, but they're pretty common throughout all our industry communities, is that we have industry-specific job boards, so that could really help you find something that maybe you hadn't thought of before.
And some of them sound so boring. They're like entertainmentcareers.net. That's a great job board. There's a lot of really good stuff in there. But
ecojobs.com.
Yeah.
And some of them look like EcoJobs, which is they've got so many great jobs. That site looks like it was built in about 1996 and has not really had a facelift in 30 years, but the jobs are still good.
I'm often a lot of times I look at those and I think, yeah, this must not have been updated. But then like, oh, there was something that was posted like 5 hours ago.
Oh yeah. It's just like the base of it is what it is, but the content is fresh.
Yep. And a lot of times they'll have you externally go to that company's own website, but at least like lets you're kind of functioning in an ecosystem where like many of the things that I'm discovering are going to be in the realm of things that I'm interested in.
You know, something came up just this past week. That was, I thought, really interesting, and it's directly related to this idea. A student came in who was working with one of our PCAs and had done just sort of what you said, was starting to branch out a bit, found a job in Handshake, thought it looked interesting, applied, I think maybe even had a phone conversation, and then came in and said, I'm worried that this isn't real or something.
I saw that going on in Teams.
Something shady's going on. So a couple of us, helped out to just take a look. And what it was definitely a legitimate company. It was here in the city, so we were able to find a lot of information about them. But even if they hadn't been, there are places you can go to check on the legitimacy of companies. They were listed in a couple of financial directories as having received some sort of funding, so their sort of like market health was listed. It was clearly a really small company. I think LinkedIn said they had 3 employees. Glassdoor said maybe they had 6 employees, right? So it was a little boutique thing, but in Center City. And then we said, okay, so it's real. In fact, Dustin very kindly even gave him a call just to check him out. So definitely legit, not a scam. But as you dug a little deeper, some of the reviews on Glassdoor were like, it was a really weird interview. Questions weren't specific to the job. It was a lot about my hours. And then some people said I ended up working there and I ended up doing a lot of grunt work, and it wasn't really the internship title as the title implied it would be.
Yeah.
It was a lot of getting coffee and making copies, and was a lot of hours. So it's like, okay, so it's important to do your research on these things and trust your gut a little, but then also ask yourself, well, what am I going to get out of that? Is it worth being around? If it's a really small group, then maybe I have a chance to really learn from somebody. But also based on things that are online, maybe it's not the most rewarding experience as an intern because you're not really getting hands-on experience. You're really doing more quote-unquote traditional internship work.
And I mean, it's helpful to be critical so you can discover things like that. I think that's where the balance comes, where I was talking about diversifying the things you're searching for so you don't feel like you're stuck in a rut for only looking at a certain type of thing, or feeling like you've exhausted all the things that you can think about in that one area. But you obviously also don't want to be so desperate that you've spread yourself so thin that you're not really paying a ton of attention to the company that you're applying to, or things seem a little bit off, but you're so desperate, you're like, oh, whatever, you're giving me a job, fine. So I think continuing to still be diligent with investigating in a little bit more. I think it was great that student came to us to ask, even though it ended up being a legitimate company, we were able to provide a little bit more insight as to what we were able to find online.
Yeah. So it's all about putting the work in, right? No matter what. Like you have to the more you put into something, hopefully the more you get out of something. So yes, I'm putting my applications out there online, but maybe I'm taking a step further. I'm refining my search a little more. I'm broadening my search a little more, one way or the other, to just try and get my attention. I'm doing my research about the companies who do contact me.
You're
the
adding the
companies that I'm interested in.
networking piece.
Exactly. You're adding the networking piece, which we talked about a lot last week, which is so important. So important. And again, not just because it's quote unquote getting your foot in the door, but you're learning. You could talk to someone and learn a lot about what the job's really like, or what the atmosphere is like.
Yeah.
Like, oh, man, it's not
And we
for
talked
me.
about this a lot last year on last season's podcast, was just the idea that you are not just being interviewed by this company, but you are also interviewing
Doing them back. Yeah.
And I think having that networking experience gives you a more casual place where you can start to discover some of those things.
Think about it feels so different maybe, but I liken it back to when I was looking at colleges too. Think about that experience. I when I was in high school, I was getting a lot of recruitment materials for DePaul University in Chicago. Man, I really thought I was going there. I loved their brochure. Now this is like 1996. And the X-Files was super hot, and Gillian Anderson was their alum of the day, because she was a fairly recent grad of DePaul and is now. And I wanted to go and learn where Agent Scully learned.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of high-profile alums, and I just thought this seems great. The language in the brochure seemed like my kind of language. The
truth is out there.
They were doing. So we went.
Did they lean into the X-Files thing? They probably shouldn't have.
No. But she was everywhere.
Yeah.
She was everywhere. We went to Chicago, my family and I, to go look at DePaul, and very quickly I was like, oh. No,
I hate it.
I didn't hate it, but I remember they had a policy that freshmen could not act.
I think I remember you telling me that before.
They could not act in a department show their first year. They could do a student-directed show, but they could not get cast.
Would you work
in a
production or
department show.
something like that instead? And
Yes.
There's at least like some benefit.
Yeah,
there
yeah.
of
You could
learning the
work on
ropes.
the show, but not as an actor. So you could run crew, you could be on the lights, you could whatever, but you could not act. And it was not a conservatory program.
Okay.
But it was a really intense program, and they could ask you to change your major after your sophomore year.
Why would they do that? What would be the purpose of asking you? They felt like you weren't a good actor.
It was essentially cutting you from the program.
Yeah, that would be rough.
Which is something that happens in conservatories, where it's the only thing you're learning.
Yeah.
That's really hard. So at least here you're like, well, maybe, I don't know, biology would be good for you. It didn't feel good. And I know acting is a rough trade, and you're going to go out in the world and you're not going to get a lot of things, and you're going to lose jobs. But one, I'm like, I'm only going to be here for 4 years, so to lose a whole year of acting experience, right out of the gate, and then to maybe be told my sophomore year, get out,
look at something else.
Yeah, it just was like, but this is what I'm here to do. This is what I'm here to do, no matter what. And so that, and combined like where it was in Chicago, it was a little farther away from the center of Chicago than I had imagined it was.
Yeah.
So like all those things contributed to me going, I better start looking elsewhere, because you're young and what you know, but you think it could be the same with the jobs. Like, I'm going to work at Natty Core, and I love Natty Core, and then the more I learn, maybe I don't want to work at Natty Core.
Natty Core is the best.
That's not what Glassdoor says. Anyway.
It was reminding me of like student athletes, like if like a Jalen Hurts type is a starting quarterback at a college and then gets benched, you got to look at the transfer portal and look at another school and then consider things, and that's a anxious position to be put in where you feel like your future is riding on that. I mean, obviously there's some benefit to like the simulated competition. I think about it with Wharton a lot, where There's the downside of sometimes our pre-professional clubs here at Penn broadly are
Overly competitive.
overly competitive. It doesn't necessarily foster a welcoming environment, which isn't great. However, there is some truth to like maybe the competitiveness does feed into some of the things that a lot of our students are interested in, like these very high-profile, big brand name investment banks and consulting firms where they do learn from that experience some. So I think there is some like pros and cons there, although I overall do like I wouldn't want to tell someone that you should put yourself through that if that's not what's going to be most useful to them.
There's always a cost-benefit analysis, right? Like, what is it really going to get me? And in something now, again, I'm using my own personal perspective here. There's always competition. Like, you can never, like, unless you're a really small department and you're handpicking your shows, but DePaul's a big school, even where I went, Muhlenberg, like, you couldn't cast every theater major in even in the whole season, right? Sometimes you're not going to get a part, or you're definitely not going to get the part you want. And so sometimes you're not going to get that. Like, so there's competition built in to acting or any part of the theater already. And I think it's true even in a club. Like, then are you going to get the role that you want? Are you going to get to be on the board?
Position
right,
you
exactly.
wanted, but you can be on the marketing team or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I like, yes, it's true. Like, sometimes it's important to learn. You can't get into everything. But I think it's so heightened here that it's not always healthy.
It's overall too much here, and I think a lot has been done to make it better, make more opportunities for general body members, making more information public about the different events that the clubs do broadly to their members or just broadly to the community. So there are a lot of good things there, but there is still that added pressure of like, students feel like, whether this is true or not, that they need to be on an e-board of a
I mean, I think it's true anywhere, and I think it's accelerated a place like this. But, yeah, you look around, and, again, we're not in the admissions business, but the people who come here as undergrads were almost all the best of the best.
Valedictorians and
right?
all sorts
and
of
now, so you really stand out in a small pond.
I talked to like 4 students in a row a couple weeks ago that were all like, I founded my own nonprofit junior year of high school. I was just like, man, I mean, I know some, obviously, I mean, I've been here long enough that I know that some students do that, but it was like 4 in a row. I was like, dang.
Well, so both that, like, so when you come here now, suddenly it's a much more even playing field. It's like, oh, I can't just like show up and be the best, right? So now I'm fighting for everything. But that also speaks to, like, friend of the podcast and frequent guest Pete Barry, his oldest daughter's looking at colleges and will be going to college next year, and so she's starting to get her acceptance letters and things. But the last 3 years probably, he's been asking me. I'm like, look, man, I'm not in admissions. I'll help her when she's on the other way out. But he did, and she is a top drawer kid, like a great kid. She's a really excellent student. And he was like, but she hasn't founded a nonprofit. And that's what I keep hearing. I was like, does she want to go to Penn? Does she want to go to Harvard? No. All right. So right away, take a deep breath.
I will also say that I've met with plenty of students who
have
successful
been here
who have
not done that. I said, but look at all the things she has done. She has so many different extracurriculars that she excels at. She plays all these different instruments.
Yeah.
She's so good at science, so good at history. They brought back an AP course at her high school so she could be the only person that took it. Because the one teacher said, I would love to teach you this if you're interested. I would love to learn that. And so she has a class of 1. So, like, those things add up to something, right? So, and it's again when you're just thinking about careers, thinking about what is it that you really want, where do you want to be, and so I think
and your definition of success, I think, is important too.
So important.
And I think a lot of times our students start with their definition of success being very brand name, big check that I'm getting every month, prestige element of things. And when I talk to our alum, I think a lot of times they start to open things up very quickly beyond that, but they've been in that ecosystem where they start with, I need to do all these things to get into Penn, and then once I'm in Penn, I need to do all these things to get to the biggest brand name company that I'm interested in. So that brand name piece, I think, too, a lot of times will shade people's impressions of what they should be doing or what is the right thing to do. And I have talked to so many alumni who are already in the field and are really happy that they didn't go to a giant big brand name and they found a better way to do things in their own role. It's not the end all be all. And I can also say, like, as much as we were talking about the founding nonprofits and all these other things that you do, we see every day at Career Services people who find ways to showcase what's unique to them, like you were talking about with Pete's daughter. That's what's most important.
That's the beautiful thing about uniqueness.
Yeah.
It's of your own. So maybe you founded a nonprofit. Maybe you did a lot of community service. Maybe you brought back an AP course that hadn't been taught in a decade. Maybe you can play the flugelhorn. You know, maybe you wrote your own TV show when you were in high school and it got on the local cable access channel. I don't know anybody who would have done that, but it's a possibility.
What was it called?
Oh, no. No, I don't want to talk about it. So I'll say I had two shows. And one was a talk show, and it was called One-on-One with Mike DeAngelis.
Okay.
And I interviewed prominent members of the Springfield School District community, including a very controversial episode where I sat down with the principal and talked about the no hats policy.
Was the principal your father?
No.
Oh, okay.
My dad was my elementary school principal.
Okay.
But you better believe when I got home that night, oh, Mr. O'Brien says you had quite a conversation today.
Did you really dig into him?
The funny thing was I could have cared less.
Yeah.
But it was someone else's project to produce the show. And I've mentioned before, I was very lucky to go to a high school that had a tiny TV studio with a really passionate teacher who was so supportive and wanted kids to be using that space. And so someone went to him and said, could we do a talk show? And he's like, great. Are you going to host it? He's like, no, I'd like to produce it. Who can we get? And he's like, oh, let's get Mike DeAngelis. He'll talk to a camera. So I did it as a one-off for this kid's project, and then the teacher was like, I think this should be on the air every week. And I was like, oh, okay. But that first one, maybe I did two for this, but I didn't set that up. Like, the producer gave me the questions, and I was like, but it was good. And my props to Dr. O'Brien for sitting down and having that conversation. But enough about me. But I did. That was my first taste of fame because I'd be like walking around the mall or in the Blockbuster Video, and people who I did not know would come up to me and be like, "You're that Mike DeAngelis from Channel 11."
That's awesome.
Good. That was a good episode.
When did it air?
It aired. I mean,
like during school? Was it live or
no?
It was
air.
Produced.
So the Springfield School District has a cable channel. I guess it's like a public access channel, so that they can air school board meetings live and things like that. And then they would just fill the programming. They'd air the choir show, right? And
Michael DeAngelis on repeats.
Mike, you're not wrong. I mean, they would have a set program for the night, and then it would just repeat. And so I was on like every night. And then later I wrote a sitcom we only produced one episode of.
Okay.
That aired. That was sort of my college admissions thing that I was showing.
Charlie's DeAngelises.
No. It was about my high school janitor was the main character.
Did he play himself?
He did.
That's great.
And a lot of my teachers played themselves, and all my friends played themselves, or in some cases played other friends of ours. Yes, but it's not
something
not to
you
be,
put
it's
together
not to be consumed
on your own. Something that you had some ingenuity behind and really were able to showcase and be proud of. So I mean, yeah, it's a cool experience to be able to.
It was so cool
to have. But then it also is so unique to who you are and something that you can still talk about even today, even if you.
Yeah, I mean, my God, there had been podcasting and YouTubing back in the day. That's where I'd have been.
I say now, even if your high school doesn't have
you can
cable
do it yourself. You can do it yourself.
Get a Twitch stream. Get a
it's
YouTube
really,
stream.
it's really unbelievable. And I think that there's a lot of pluses and minuses to everyone being able to do that kind of stuff. But a lot of it's a plus to me. It means there's very little stopping you from expressing yourself and and doing something, and reaching so many people. I mean, how many people that we reach with this, or that I reach with Mission Rejected, all around the world? It's unbelievable to me still.
It's really cool.
So I guess we'll keep doing it
For now.
Now, yeah, we've done 2 of them in the studio. That's enough. We're good. No, but we'll be back. We're going to start bringing some guests in.
Yeah, we got some cool guests lined up.
And I'm just so happy that we have this space.
Yeah, you'll see some micro changes probably along the way as we figure things out. But
for sure. And this will look even sharper once Lorna returns from her semester abroad in Washington, D.C.
Truly abroad.
A stranger in a strange land. But she'll be able to... our controls are far off camera, so we're not able to really control anything. I have to do it all in post. But she'll be able to do some stuff live. It's just going to be great. Zoom people in.
Bring herself in
from over at the control panel. We're going to blow Conan out of the water.
Team Coco, watch out.
All right. Well, I hope everyone had a great spring break. We're really looking forward to working with you for the rest of the semester. Be on the lookout for that just-in-time fair and for other opportunities that are coming into your inbox from Handshake and from Uconnect all the time. There's so much out there in the world. Just go out there and seize it. If you're graduating, we hope you'll come by to the bookstore and stop by our table before or after you get your cap and gown. And if not, please, please, please fill out the career plan survey. It will be in your inbox by the time you listen to this, and we'll be reminding you from now until Thanksgiving to please fill it out. It really means so much to us. And if you're on the job search, look at the outcomes reports on our website, because you'll see how valuable that information is when your peers, are looking to learn about an industry or what people in their major did.
It's one of those strategies of finding companies that maybe you haven't heard of. You could start with, what did someone in my major do last year?
Who hired someone just like me? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really easy way to expand out and be like, oh, yeah, I was only thinking of these, but here's some other really cool things that I hadn't even thought about.
So take a look at that, and we'll see you next time on CS Radio. This podcast is produced by the University of Pennsylvania Career Services Office, a division of University Life. It was created by J. Michael DeAngelis and Amy Lynn Kirshner. Your hosts and producers are J. Michael DeAngelis and Natty Leach, and it's produced, mixed, and edited by Lorna Lynn. If you like this podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at Penn Career Serve. We'll see you next time on CS Radio.